Hi, I'm Laura Warren, and I'm joined by Doug Baker, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Welcome, Doug.
Nice to be here with you again.
Doug and I have connected in the past, and Doug, I wanted to ask you, you've said that it's not so simple for our clients to understand how meditation is relevant in therapy, beyond simply learning to cultivate moments of calm. Can you speak more to this? I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah, thank you. It's a question that's on my mind all the time, and I think it's a really interesting one. I find it very interesting that maybe the sort of the most basic idea or the common idea about why therapists may employ mindfulness and meditation is to help their clients calm down and have moments of calm. And I think that's true, and that's a perfectly good and sometimes a very valuable experience for people in therapy, to be led into a meditation, and it can be really even life changing. The first time that one has sort of that spacious, quiet mind experience, is like everybody saying, wow, I never knew my mind could do that. It's just been chattering seemingly just in perpetuity, like since as far back as I can remember. So that can be really remarkable, and it opens up just sort of a new glimpse into the mind, of the potential of what it's like to be the owner of this mind and the user of this mind, of like, oh, there's actually like a quiet possibility, a quiet place that it can go. Um, so that's very valuable. At the same time, it can be unhelpful if that's the only expectation, or if the idea is that that's our goal in using mindfulness, is that you'll have these little moments of calm, as sweet and wonderful and helpful as they can be. They come to an end, and eventually they don't really solve, generally speaking, why people are in therapy. They're in therapy because there's some sort of a conflict, they're suffering in some way. They're often in conflict with aspects of themselves. So it's complex and really rich to begin to explore with the therapy client. So how else can this be helpful? What else is happening here? And I often, one of the other intentions, in other words, in mindfulness and therapy, is learning to be with our challenges, learning to be with our distress, to kind of sit with it with less struggle. And so that's maybe a more subtle or not so obvious goal, because often people come to meditation with the idea that, okay, you're supposed to become calm, but in fact we don't always become calm. You're supposed to not have any thinking, but we've all noticed there's no off switch for the thinking production in the mind. So this other intention is supporting people to have an experience where they sit with the full range of their experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between, and learn to be with themselves in a way that is perhaps more compassionate and more accepting. So and then I might add, like a third perspective or a third intention sometimes can be to really kind of get to know a little more objectively, if you will, what the habits of the mind are. Like, oh, my mind, well, one of the teachers I've studied with, who you'll know, Joseph Goldstein, one of the preeminent, mindfulness teachers here in the US, he has wonderfully said in a very pithy way, if you want to understand the mind, sit down and observe it. In other words, meditate. And so that's part of what can happen as we meditate, is we get to, quote unquote, watch the mind. And we see, oh, wow, my mind is highly distractible, or my mind tends to pick out the one or two things that are wrong in each moment. So it's kind of that negativity bias can kind of like rise to the surface, and we can see that. Or, oh, my mind tends to proliferate with these future-based thoughts that are, have a real like worrying quality about all the things that might go wrong, tomorrow, next year, right? And so we can get to see that, like, oh, these are the patterns, kind of the habits of my particular mind. And that can be so helpful because then it can give us a little leverage. We can see like, oh, my mind's doing that old thing again, going into the future, concocting all these bad things that might happen. Um, but as Mark Twain said, there's a wonderful quote from Twain where he says something like, my life has been full of disastrous events, some of which actually happened. He was kind of, goofing on the idea that the mind will just go and concoct these, horrible events, but they're really just existing in our mind. So that last intention then is like kind of like putting the mind under a microscope or in a petri dish where we get to observe it with some objectivity, and we don't have to feel responsible for what it's doing. So that can help people to have a little separation from the activity in the mind. And so those are all really juicy things to investigate in therapy, and beyond that, just a little moment of calm.
They sure are. Yeah, I love hearing how you speak of that extra space between us and our minds. It's such an easy thing to forget because we all live with our minds
Right.
all the time.
We're all in there. We're in there with this, this thinker, and yeah.
Yeah. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about obstacles in meditation and mindfulness, and how we can help our clients work with them. As you've alluded to, there are plenty of times that we get tripped up or sort of stuck or stuck in not liking what's happening. Can you say a little more about obstacles that you've encountered in working with clients?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important obstacles to kind of look into is like, what are the preconceived notions about meditation and mindfulness? And again, as I was just mentioning, like, does my client believe like, oh, I'm supposed to be peaceful, right? Or I'm supposed to be free of thoughts, or I'm supposed to be non-judgmental, because the instruction is to just observe non-judgmentally. But that doesn't mean that the judgmental thoughts won't continue to arise. So one of the obstacles is people in one way or another concluding, I can't meditate, because I can't stop thinking, or I don't feel peaceful. And this kind of I can't narrative is one that has to be worked with skillfully, to help people turn it to see like, oh no, this is, you're observing kind of the messiness of the mind and the challenges of the mind. It doesn't mean you can't meditate. That's what meditating is. So in other words, clarifying the intention is an important kind of working through, one of the obstacles that comes up, this belief that we can't do it. And then also, the distractibility, for example, or the sense of agitation that many of us feel when we meditate. I would bet that you often sit down and you don't find yourself all that peaceful sometimes, and it's certainly true for me. Like, so that that was a very helpful thing in my learning about meditation. And just like, oh, that's okay. I can let go of that expectation. Like, sure, I want to shoot for that. But the paradox is we also need to be able to let go of that when it's not happening, the kind of the mind becoming peaceful. So sitting with the agitation, the busyness in the mind, helping people practice, it's a great time to practice acceptance, self-acceptance. How will they react to those, kind of challenging experiences in their nervous system, their emotions, and their thoughts? So the obstacles in meditation can be really rich and very opportune to work with, but the client needs guidance and they need coaching around how to kind of understand those, because otherwise people will assume, oh, like this isn't supposed to be happening. Meditation is supposed to be really peaceful. And it's like, no, it's actually a chance where it's an experience where we meet ourselves. We see ourselves, maybe in more full flower. We see all the full range of our experience. And often, those demons that we sit with, they often arise when we, turn off the phone and we sit with ourselves. There's no more distractions. And that's often what rises to the surface. So very, very rich stuff to work with. And when people change that view and see like, oh, this is supposed to be happening, I'm supposed to have these challenges, because it's real life. Meditation is not, somehow kind of exempt from the challenges of, quote unquote, real life. real life, follows you right to the meditation cushion. And you don't get you're not exempt just because you're meditating. So that's some of the ways to talk about the obstacles. And, we'll talk more in the longer conversation about both of these.
Thank you so much, Doug. I love the perspective of integrating this into the larger obstacles and the reality of life. And just really helpful to hear your thoughts.
Great.
So, it's really nice to connect.
Same here. Yeah, we'll talk more.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Laura.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.